Power banks, they're usually our lifesavers until this happens.
Earlier this year, a fire erupted on board a Scoot flight seconds before the plane took off. The cause? An exploding power bank. This incident joins a long list of cases from around the world of sudden and violent fires caused by our portable battery chargers.
In this episode of Talking Point, I want to find out just how dangerous our power banks are.
Power banks can come in a dizzying array of options. Whether you buy it off the shelf from local retailers, at street bazaars, or online. Prices can range from as cheap as 10 Singapore dollars for a no-brand 20,000 milliamperes capacity power bank to a whopping 50 Singapore dollars for a branded one with a smaller power capacity. I want to know if there's a difference between the various types of power banks when it comes to safety. So I've grabbed some branded ones, which I bought off the shelves. My producer buys some budget-friendly ones online.
When the flag is yes, then the power bank can ramp up the voltage.
We're bringing them to Andreas Hauser, who has spent the past 18 years testing batteries.
Hey guys, so I've gone out and bought these power banks. And this one, I paid almost $50 for it.
Wow.
It says it can charge up to 2 devices, fast charging simultaneously in just 3 hours. You picked up a few too, right?
Yes, I did. I have 2 sets here.
Okay.
One is from an online marketplace, and depending on which online shop you buy it from, it can cost between $10 to $15.
Okay.
Yeah. And it says here super fast charge. It has a capacity of 20,000 milliamperes.
Wow, mine's only 10,000.
And it can charge up to 5 devices simultaneously.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Now these ones, you can buy them in bulk from an online website. The more you buy, the cheaper the power banks actually are.
So, the question is, how safe are they all?
Power banks now fall under the consumer safety goods requirements. So it means that when you buy at a Singapore shop or if you buy online from a Singapore vendor, then you're supposed to get a power bank that has actually undergone safety testing. If not, then the vendor gets fined. When you just buy online from overseas, you go to Taobao or something similar, you don't have this kind of protection because it's outside of the Singapore government purview. That means you can import them. They're not forbidden to be imported, but you may get something that is not safety tested and it may be quite dangerous.
So actually, what sort of safety certification do power banks sold in Singapore need to undergo?
Yes, and for Singapore, we have to pass this specific battery safety standard. It's called IEC 62133-2. That's the one that applies for lithium-ion batteries in portable devices.
But how do I know whether it's been tested or not?
Yes, so what I've seen before in Singapore shops is that the vendors themselves, they actually put a sticker on it and say this was tested according to the 62133-2.
Okay. I don't see it on this.
Yes, so the manufacturer may not necessarily include it. It's not required that there is some kind of sticker on the device.
Okay. And all these tests that need to be done for these batteries, can you do them here?
Yeah, we can.
Andreas is going to show us how power banks are stress tested to ensure their safety. Now, these tests usually take 2 weeks. But for the purpose of our program, Andreas will compress the duration to just 1 full day. He'll take the power banks through a case stress test, vibration tests, drop tests, and short circuit and overcharge tests. After the tests are done, Andreas will tell me what he found out. And some of the facts are worrying.
It's not a fail, but it's definitely a cause of concern, I would say.
Andreas! So I'm back because
Yes.
we've done with the testing, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about the results.
So case stress, what we did here was we put the batteries in the oven, and this test is 70 degrees.
Right.
And the idea is to see if the case opens up and deforms, exposing the internal components. But in this case, all three are fine.
Are they still working? Oh, yes. Yes, and yes,
Yeah.
they're all still working.
Correct, they're all still working, yeah.
So the heat actually had no real effect on them.
Yeah, not to the extent that you notice.
All right, next one, the short circuit test.
Short circuit test. For all three, the protection electronics was good enough that it survived.
Oh, it's still working, yeah.
Still working, yeah. It didn't burn, it didn't smoke, it didn't explode.
And overcharging.
Overcharging means we apply more voltage than they're rated for. Like this one is rated maximum 12 volt, so we put 14 volt on this one. And this one is only 5 volt, so we put 6 volt on it. These two are dead, like they don't turn on anymore. They passed from a safety perspective, because safety perspective is no fire, no explosion.
Because very often overcharging is one of the main reasons fires take place, right?
Yes, correct.
And the same for this as well?
This one is a bit special because it bloated.
Ah, oh, okay.
So-
I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, so you see it basically only when you look at it like this.
Yeah.
You can see it open up a gap here.
That's right.
So inside this battery started to swell. And this creates so much force that it bends this aluminum case.
Wow. Which
Yes.
means there's actually quite a lot of swelling in here.
Yes, this is actually a dangerous case because when you look, it turns on.
Oh, it's still working.
It's working. Means the normal user maybe thinks it's fine to use, but it's not. Because the bloating, eventually it will pop.
Oh, a few more times when I charge it,
Correct,
one day
correct.
it's going to go boom.
Yes, and then you have a fire. It's not a fail, but it's definitely a cause of concern, I would say.
Okay, so that one actually is dangerous.
Even the one that got bloated passed the overcharging test because it didn't catch fire. But it's definitely unsafe to use.
All right, vibration. What is this?
We had it on the vibration table and it's moving up and down with relatively high frequencies. We didn't see any direct change on the samples, but we opened them up so we can see the difference. So this is the cheaply made one. And when we open this up, all that's holding them in place is a small strip of glue. Certainly in Singapore, humidity and temperature, we will probably have the glue fail sooner or later. And then, as you can see, it moves around a lot.
And why is that a bad thing?
These cells are the heaviest part of the power bank.
Yeah.
It means that when you walk, when you're on the bus, when you're in a car, and all the time inside this is rattling around. And all this moving causes stress on the cable. And because they're also very flimsy. Eventually this may rip off, then it's dangling loose. If you're unlucky, then this cable makes contact with another point, and then you get a short circuit. And then the short circuit leads to overheating, to fire. We only did it for a shorter period of time. If we do the full 12 hours, it probably fails as well. This one here, there's no cable actually. They use a metal strip and it's welded on. So this one doesn't come off so easily.
Okay.
Yeah. When you close the case, it doesn't really have a lot of room to move. That's the difference you can see in the quality.
All three power banks passed the truncated vibration test. But one of them, this unbranded one, would have likely failed if it was subjected to the full duration of the stress test.
And then last but not least, we had the drop test.
Oh.
We dropped the samples down from a meter height onto a steel floor, and then we have a look at, does the case crack? Does it shatter completely and pieces fly around? And all three didn't break open. But for this one, actually it popped open a little bit. It's not flush anymore. And you can see the electronics here already.
Why is this so dangerous?
This is not supposed to be touched. And if you then put it in your pocket again, there's some key inside or something, then you short it out. The result for the drop test, we don't need to necessarily have a fire. We're already exposing the internals, and it means we already have a problem here.
Okay.
The one that failed the drop test was the unbranded power bank, with certification status unknown. The stress tests do seem to show that price is a reflection of quality and thus safety of a power bank. At the very least, I should look for one that is clearly labelled certified. But how exactly does an explosion happen?
This thing called thermal runaway can happen whereby the cell gets incredibly hot and hotter by the seconds.
For the past decade, Derek Pham has been leading the charge to manufacture safer lithium-ion batteries. He's going to show me how a power bank explodes. The lithium-ion batteries in power banks have four main components. An anode made from copper and coated in graphite, a cathode made from aluminium and covered with lithium iron phosphate, a separator, and an electrolyte. At temperatures above 80 degrees Celsius, the electrolyte in these batteries begin to decompose at increasingly faster speeds, as the temperature inside the power bank rises exponentially out of control, causing a reaction called thermal runaway. That's when an explosion happens.
How does this thermal runaway situation occur in the first place?
Once a short circuit inside the cell, so when that happens, the electrons don't flow out of the battery anymore. They flow directly from the anode to the cathode. And that will cause a very quick increase in the charge and also the temperature of the cell. And the cell will start burning. The electrolyte component inside the battery decomposes when it's charged beyond a certain limit that it's not supposed to be charged to.
Oh, yeah. So overcharging.
Exactly, yeah. So if the batteries are meant to be charged to 3.8 volts, and if you overcharge it to 5 volts, for example, things will start to happen to the electrolyte.
Okay, so I guess we'll never really know until something happens, right?
Yep, the best way to show you what happens when something does happen to the power bank, it's over here.
To show me what happens during thermal runaway, Derek sets up a couple of experiments. First, a nail drop test to simulate a short circuit inside the battery cell. This can happen when batteries are poorly designed or manufactured. Batteries that might end up in your hands if you buy an uncertified power bank. So for this experiment, we're using an unbranded power bank where the certification status is unknown.
You're good to go. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Nervous and excited. Okay. Nails going down. Why am I scared? I'm outside.
I'm about to drive this nail through the power bank below, so that I can see what happens during thermal runaway, when the temperature in a lithium-ion battery rises out of control until it explodes.
And start. Nails going down. Why am I scared? I'm outside. Wow! That was like 1 second. And the whole thing is in flames. And it's still burning.
It's still burning, yeah. Putting out a lithium-ion battery fire is really, really, really challenging. Because lithium is very reactive, it reacts with any and everything. So to stop a battery fire from propagating, you have fire bags, for example, that you can stuff it into.
Okay, so kind of cut off the oxygen to the device.
Without any fire bags, we're going to just let the fire burn itself out.
And even after it stopped burning, the temperature of the battery still remains very, very high.
Yeah, it just stopped burning, so don't see any flames, but it's still 200 degrees.
Yep.
Our next experiment, overcharging a power bank. Again, we're using an unbranded one with unknown certification status.
This power bank is able to take up to 3.2 volts normally. So we're going to fill up past that actually. You can see here, it's about 4.9 volts already. Think of it as a balloon. So the current is the amount of water you pump into the balloon. When does the balloon burst? We're not sure.
So at any time it could give way?
Yep.
So when we're using a power bank, we never know when something like that might happen.
Which is quite dangerous if left unattended and it's overcharging. You can see the temperature is no longer at room temperature of 24 degrees.
Right.
So there's evidence of things that are happening inside the cell that it shouldn't happen.
Okay, so we've been going for about 11 minutes. Wow, temperature's actually rising quite quickly now. This guy is really hot stuff now.
I'm guessing the battery inside is a bit bloated now. There we go. See smoke coming out.
We see smoke now.
Yeah.
Oh! Wow! Just like that. Snap. Let's take a look. See the damage done. Oh, wow. That is all black right here. This is where the charge was going in, right?
Yep, that's right.
So this burned first.
Yep.
This is scary stuff. And we were doing in a confined space that is specially created for this. But if this were to happen on a plane...
Yeah, it could be quite dangerous if it happens on a plane, especially if it's near other flammable things. It could lead to a series of fires.
Remember this incident on a Scoot flight earlier this year? Prior to filming this episode, I ran a poll asking you if you're familiar with the rules on powerbank use on flights. I want to know if you got our poll questions right.
Hey, hi Vincent.
And I've got an expert to help me.
I wanted to check with the general public when it comes to power banks on planes, whether they actually know the rules. First one, I'm allowed to use my portable charger while the plane is taxiing before takeoff and after landing. Is that true or false?
A third of respondents said yes, they can.
The answer is false. Passengers are only allowed to use the power banks during the cruising phase of a flight. When the aircraft is at the cruising altitude, the cabin crew is able to move around in the cabin. And in the event of an incident involving a power bank, the cabin crew can attend to the incidents very quickly.
There are no restrictions on the type of portable chargers I can hand carry on board a flight.
82% of respondents said it was false.
Most people are right. There is a restriction to the energy capacity of power banks that are carried by passengers. Passengers should not carry power banks that are exceeding 27,000 milliamperes. When the capacity of the power banks get bigger, the risk and the effects of power banks catching fire would be a lot greater. Passengers should also protect the power banks from damage or short circuit by placing them individually in a plastic bag or in a protective pouch that is made of non-conductive material.
Is that a restriction? I never knew that was a rule too.
That is a requirement when passengers bring power banks, and other restrictions include not having metal objects placed together with the power bank. So things like coins, safety pins, metal buttons to avoid short circuit of the power bank. And power banks that are damaged, cracked casing, showing signs of bulging that may be deformed, those should not be carried on board an aircraft.
I must check in my portable charger.
Once again, a third of respondents said yes.
Most people will know that they cannot check in their portable chargers. Power banks contain lithium batteries, and lithium batteries are inherently flammable in nature, especially when the power banks are damaged or when they are not manufactured according to safety standards. They should be hand carried into the cabin of the aircraft so that in the event of an incident involving power banks, the cabin crew can attend to that immediately.
Okay, one more. It's okay to charge my portable charger by plugging it into the in-flight entertainment system.
Respondents were quite split on this, with 59% saying no, you can't.
It depends. Passengers can charge their power banks using the in-seat power supply only when the aircraft is cruising. So they cannot do this when the aircraft is at the critical phases of flight.
Have we encountered incidences before?
Yes, we have encountered. In the last 8 years, there have been 9 incidents involving lithium batteries that are carried on board the aircraft, operated by our Singapore operators. Out of these 9 incidents, 5 were involving power banks.
If lithium-ion batteries are inherently dangerous goods, like Vincent said, I want to know if anything's being done to make them safer for all of us in the future. I've decided to pay Derek Farm another visit because I hear he may have a solution with this.
So how are you guys using a plastic water bottle like this to make lithium-ion batteries safer?
What we are doing is we take the plastic bottle and turn it into something more valuable than the actual plastic bottle. In this case, a solid polymer electrolyte for lithium-ion batteries.
So that's actually a good thing because we're putting this to
Good use.
better use
Yes.
than what it used to be.
Yep.
How does it work in keeping the battery safe?
Electrolytes are typically in a liquid form when you see lithium-ion batteries in the market today. Liquid electrolytes, they contain carbonates, and carbonates are very flammable. In our electrolyte, these guys, they don't contain any carbonates. It doesn't burn so easily.
So the whole idea is to replace the liquid electrolyte with these polymer electrolytes.
Yep.
Here's the process. Cut up the plastic, mix the pieces with a reagent that breaks them down into even smaller fragments. And after a few hours, we arrive at this. Then we'll purify and filter the mixture to get to the powder, which we'll stitch together chemically to get this, a polymer electrolyte.
And will this be cheaper than the liquid electrolyte?
So typically, liquid electrolytes are pretty expensive materials. Your plastic bottles cost very little. These could cost a lot less.
So it'll be cheaper and safer.
safer.
And how long will it take to get there?
Well, not anytime soon, because there's a whole lot of processes of optimization of the making of these electrolytes to integrating them in batteries that needs to be done before we commercialize products like that. Yeah.
5 years?
I can't say for sure, but yeah, it could take a while.
Until the time when safer lithium-ion batteries hit the market, our power banks will remain inherently dangerous. So the next time you're out shopping for one, consider one with the necessary protection against overcharging and therefore overheating. You can look for labels like this, and if you can't find it on the box, you can always drop the manufacturer an email. And if you're traveling and you want to carry it around, why not pop it into one of these protective pouches? This keeps it safe from knocking around and coming into contact with any other metallic objects, like my keys.